Alright everyone, so in this video here, I wanted to react to a video The Verge came out with not too long ago. It's called How We Build a $2,000 Custom Gaming PC. And word is getting out that this video that The Verge did is absolutely terrible. I've built PCs in the past. The PC I'm currently using right now, I custom built it myself. Hell, even that particular build that I did, I made a video about it. I put it up on YouTube. The end product, how that PC came out, was near professional level. Near professional level build in terms of build quality, you know. Cable management, all that stuff, really put together. This, I've had problems with The Verge for a little while now, only because it seems like the people that they're using to talk about technology really has no idea what they're talking about, and the stuff that they would complain about is honestly stuff that the majority of the people out there doesn't really care, okay? Especially when it comes to the cell phones. Oh my god, The Verge likes to complain about, oh my god, look how thick the bezel is around the screen. Is the phone actually good, okay? Is it a good phone? Is the phone gonna crap out on you? How good are the speakers? Things like that. But when you're talking about, oh, how the design looks on the device versus how good is the phone itself, that's a little bit of a problem right there. This, however, holy crap, the Verge, if you're watching this video right now, please, if you are even thinking about adding more PC type videos like this for PC gaming or PC parts, you need to bring in some kind of expert or even someone that is a little bit more knowledgeable, because the way you guys put this video together, it's a complete fail from start to finish. This guy has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. The people that edit this video, the people that approve this video, everyone in The Verge has absolutely no idea about custom PC gaming. They really don't. And towards the end of this video, it's just absolutely unbelievable. Enough talking, let's get to it. And you know what, I want to just make sure the audio is actually coming through. Okay. So the audio should be working.
So a few years ago, TC, or Managing Editor, built a gaming desktop, but it's kind of out of date. And
by the way, you gotta love this presented by Capital One, because obviously Capital One threw the Verge some money. It's like, hey, feel free to make a video like this. Just make sure you have our name on here throughout the video.
And it's definitely not going to hold up for Battlefield 5. So let's build.
By the way, before we continue, I know Battlefield 5 is fixing to come out. I'm just going to say this right now. The Frostbite engine that EA uses for their games, while very impressive, is not really an engine. It's not really a games engine that you don't really need the latest and greatest of stuff. The PC I'm using right now, okay? Actually, let me pull up my... By the way, this PC is a AMD rig. So this is what I'm running here, okay? graphics card I have in here, AMD Radeon R9 290X. I actually have 2 of the cards on here. The processor is also AMD is an AMD FX-8320E is an 8-core processor. It's a little outdated, but when it comes to gaming, you know, this particular PC I'm using right now, it's several years old. It's like, I want to say at least 4 years old now. When did this processor come out? Let's see. So yeah, this is the processor I use. $92.99. I know Amazon usually has it when it was released. When was this listed? Right here, first date available, September 1st, 2014. This is a 4-year-old processor. Okay? 4-year-old processor. And let's see. What is it? R9 290X. And the particular graphics card I got is the reference model. So it's not like these kinds here. But let's just look at this one just to keep this video going. This one came out on April 18th, 2017. Okay, so this is a slightly newer card. But if I remember correctly, I think the graphics card that I bought, it is a reference, but it is, I did get it slightly later on. But the stuff I'm using in this computer is not the latest and greatest, especially the processor. It's a 4-year-old processor. The RAM, if I remember correctly, is running DDR3, so it's not even DDR4. And when I played Battlefield 4 on this computer, even when I tried out Battlefield 1 beta, I've had everything maxed out, full resolution that this particular monitor I use supports, and I was getting well over 100 frames per second. Battlefield 1 or even Battlefield 5 is not as high demanding of a game as people like The Verge wants you to think. But I'll shut up. Let's get back to the video.
Build a new one. You can build a gaming desktop for around $1,000.
You can actually build a pretty capable gaming PC for under $1,000. I would say bare minimum $600 minimum. Anything cheaper, you're starting to skimp on the CPU and the RAM. $600 minimum for a decent gaming PC. But $1,000 is not a bad start either, but you can go cheaper. But we'll just continue.
I want to go all out, so I spent around $2,000. A PC like this is going to be able to play most games at ultra settings. So, what do you need to build a desktop? Well, of course, first you need a table. Preferably not metal. If it's going to be metal, have an anti-static working surface layered on top of it, a thermal paste applicator.
Okay. The whole electrostatic thing makes sense. You don't want to use metal, but if you don't want to get a mat to put on your workstation, one other way around it is, and I've done this in the past, Take all your parts that you're going to be using, take them out of the packages, and just put them on top of the electrostatic bags that came with them. I've done that. I never ran into any issues. If I'm wrong on that, then maybe I've just gotten lucky. But that is your next best thing. Use the bags that came with it because those are electrostatic bags. Or anti-static bags. I might have misspoken there, but there are any static bags. Use them. They're fine.
An Allen wrench, some tweezers to tighten up the wires, a Swiss Army knife, which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it.
A Swiss Army knife that hopefully has a screwdriver on it. Seriously, The Verge? Are you serious? I think the average person, but then again, you know what? I'm not going to walk down that path. But I think the average person would have a standalone screwdriver. Just saying.
And last but not least, an anti-static bracelet, which is to protect you and the parts. These are the parts you're going to need, but
unless those bands have improved, I've heard and I've seen videos where they've actually done tests on them, and the bands that just goes around your wrist, those bands are pretty much a scam. If you want to ground yourself, just find something metal, touch your hand on it. It'll release any static electricity you might have on you, and you're pretty much good to go. Obviously, you know, if you're working on carpet, you don't really want to like rub your feet on the carpet as you're working on it. You know, just find a sensible place to put your PC together.
more importantly, before we get there, we need to understand what these parts are doing and how they interact with one another. To better understand the parts that make up a desktop, let's try to
This part I like. This part, the average person should be able to understand this part. And just on the side note, even though I have a problem with The Verge's content and the people running The Verge, one thing I'm not going to disagree on is their production value. The Verge always has good production value on all their videos.
Understand them individually.
And this is no different.
The processor is like the computer's brain, a base of calculations that control everything the computer does. The motherboard is like the foundation, serving as a main structure for all other parts to be added to. It also allows the other parts to communicate with one another, which also makes it kind of like a nervous system. Graphics cards are responsible for rendering and processing visuals into what you see on screen. Our PC's power supply is of course channeling electricity, in that it adjusts and provides the right amount of energy to keep it running. Last but not least, RAM, or random access memory, and your hard drive are good examples of short-term and long-term memory, respectively. If you want to better understand what kind of computer to build, then first figure out what you want to use it for. A gamer might...
This part makes sense. Though one caveat with this section here is when they start talking about video streaming. If you're going to be using this PC for multi-purpose, and I think the average person at this point, if they want a desktop PC, they're wanting it for multi-purpose usage. If you're going with Intel, bare minimum i5. Skip the i3s. Spend the extra money for the i5. If you want to go the i7, fine. This part here, I'm personally going to say bare minimum i5.
Might care more about a graphics card than, say, a video editor who might want extra RAM to assist with editing large files. If you're building a budget build for video streaming, say under $1,000, you want to focus on parts like a Core i5 or Core i3 processor.
This part here is what I was talking about. Spend the extra money, skip the i3s.
That require less energy. They'll be less powerful, but then you'll be able to scale back the cost of several other parts. And if you need help choosing the right parts for your build, there's sites like PCPartPicker.com that...
And yes, that is actually a really good website. Not going to knock them for that. anyone out there that is interested in PC building and they just want to find out, hey, you know, what kind of parts should I get? That is actually a really good website to use.
Help show presets for which parts fit together, which sort of part conflicts you might have, and where to find deals on new parts.
And just on the side note, the particular PC I built, it does lean more towards gaming, but it's a very balanced machine. I never had any real issues with playing any of the games I've installed on this computer. Besides like updating the drivers for new games that comes out, I never really had any issues running games on my computer. It's a very balanced, and all the parts I've selected works together really well.
We have a lot of boxes and a lot of PC parts, so it's best you unbox them, isolate the parts that you really need, place items into the case, and make...
This part here, that part, that's the power supply. That, what he just did right there, is a no-no.
Sure that they all fit and then start working. And now we're really going to start building by adding the motherboard in. Some notes about installing motherboards: they're really delicate, you should be really careful with them, and screw in with confidence, but also don't screw in too hard, otherwise you could crack the board.
My rule of thumb when it comes to screwing stuff in, especially when it comes to PC builds, when I'm turning the screwdriver, once it stops, I don't turn it anymore. I just turn the screwdriver. Once it stops, that's it. I'm not going to over tighten. I'm not going to make it too loose, but I'm just going to turn once I feel there's resistance and it's not going to turn anymore, you know, without like doing that. But it's like just turning and then just stops. That's where I stop.
I chose Asus's Z370 motherboard for two main reasons. One, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also it has support for NVMe SSDs, meaning you can get really fast SSDs that are really easy to install. Pay close attention to the brace that goes at the back of...
I never heard of that being called a brace. I mean, it's just an I/O shield.
The computer. You always have to make sure that you really hammer it in, because there's no screw. It really just has to go outside of the case.
And yeah, he is right about this. Those I/O shields, they are, you really have to push them in. They do go on there fairly tight.
Clasp onto the frame.
One thing I've noticed when I watched this the first time, maybe it's just me, but before the motherboard goes in, I usually try to put all the parts that needs to go on apart from the graphics card. So the processor is going to go on outside of the case. If I put the RAM chips, they're going to go outside of the case. Why? Because you got more room. You don't have to worry about, in this case, touching the metal case and potentially shorting out the processor or anything like that. But personally for me, I've always put the processors in the RAM outside of the case and then place it inside the case.
And this is very important because otherwise you can't align the motherboard correctly with the holes. We're just going to start installing all 8 screws. So next we're going to install the RAM on the motherboard. I chose Corsair's 16GB Vengeance LED RAM for two main reasons. One, it has LEDs and we do like lights in our gaming.
Maybe it's just me. Maybe because I'm just getting older. I am 33, soon to be 34 in a couple months. Wow. But the whole LED thing, quite honestly, I could give two craps about. If I can get the same stuff but cheaper and without the LED stuff on it, I'm gonna go that route. That's just me. But if you guys want LEDs, I mean, they do give you those options. But I'd rather spend the money on better hardware than extra bling. But again, that's just me.
Desktops. Secondly, it's pretty fast RAM. It's 2,666 megahertz, I believe. So it's pretty fast. And this...
If you are going to be talking about specs, have the specs either on a piece of paper on the side or someone holding up the specs of what you're talking about. Just don't say a bunch of numbers and say, I believe, you know, this is the specs for it. Don't do that. That's just me. You know, when I try to give the specs of what, like early in this video, the specs on my PC, I try to give you the actual numbers, the actual model numbers of what I'm using.
This motherboard supports that speed, which is most important. Open the slots first, and just aligning the stick with the middle of the strip, not with the end, and just lining that up with the logo. So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold connectors on the side anymore, that's when you know the RAM is in. Step 3, we're going to install the...
Hang on a second.
strip, not with the end, and just lining that up with the logo.
By the way, when you're putting RAM in on the motherboard, which is part of the reason why I like to do this outside of the case, so I'm not putting stress on the motherboard itself. But you want to make sure that when the RAM is going into the slot, that is going in evenly, not slanting. So when you're pushing the RAM down with the clamps open, you want to make sure you are pressing the RAM down on both sides at the same time. You want to make sure those clips it together at the same time, because you could actually damage it. The RAM sticks, you know, from those pin connectors, you could actually damage those if you're going from one side to the next.
So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold connectors on the side anymore, that's when you know the RAM is in. Step 3, we're going to
I think there's going to be a closer shot, but
install the hard drive.
Whoops.
Or in this case, the NVMe SSD. I chose this format of
I think there's a closer shot
so that I could input it into the motherboard without having to worry about extra wires or putting it in a separate part of the case and just getting really messy. This is from Kingston, and it's 480 gigabytes, so it's not a lot, but you can always upgrade this and swap it out, and it's only held down by one screw and the latch, so it's really simple and really straightforward. Speed for gaming is important when it comes to a hard drive. You want files to write quickly and you want games to load quickly, so that's why it's best if you use an SSD. Okay, so step 4, we're going to install the graphics card.
Alright, let me go back. And by the way, there was something I said earlier, you know, about putting the CPU on the board, you know, before you put the motherboard into the case. Where's the part about the CPU? Next thing. This shot's a little blurry, but look at these RAM chips. Look at these the RAM cards. Unless this motherboard is a little different on how you can put the RAM chips into the motherboard, that right now, if it's like most other boards that I've ever used and did the research on, that is running in single channel, not dual channel, which means you're not going to get the full performance out of the RAM because it's all going down through one pipe. So if the RAM on the right was the one slot over, that would be in dual channel. Right now that's running in single channel, which means all of that RAM is going into a single lane instead of separate lanes into the motherboard, which means you're not going to get the full performance out of that RAM.
Okay, so step 4, we're going to install the graphics card. I chose PNY's GTX 1080, which is overclocked, and so it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find the gold connectors, and you're going to line this bracket with the back end bracket of your PC case. Now, which lane you choose depends entirely on what other parts you're going to put in the system.
It actually does matter which ones you're using. First of all, if you're putting a graphics card, a high-end graphics card, like this particular graphics card, you know, it's a very good graphics card. You want to make sure that graphics card is going into the slot that takes full advantage of that card. Okay? This motherboard has built-in Wi-Fi, has a bunch of USB ports on it. Most people use the built-in sound chip from the motherboard for the sound. You don't really need much in the other slots besides the graphics card. Okay? You know, if you want an internal Elgato capture card, fine. But you don't want to limit the potential of the graphics card because you put it in, say, like an 8X slot or a 4X slot versus the 16X, or things like that. In other words, the graphics card should be in the best slot the motherboard supports, so that way you get the most performance out of that graphics card. Everything else after that, in terms of the cards or anything else that goes into the other slots, is always secondary. Remember, when you're looking at those slots, find out which slot takes full advantage or the most it can do on the graphics card you put in there. And then everything else is going to be secondary.
System. I'm just going to pick the top one because the SSD is at the bottom and I don't want to cover it. I just think it looks nice.
Remember before, early in the video, how I was basically saying that the problem I have with the Verge is the people working for the Verge, the people that are talking about technology, their number one concern, their top priority on everything they talk about is how good does this device look? How pretty this particular device looks. This phone I use is a Google Pixel 2. What is going to be the biggest complaint they have is the thick bezels on the top and bottom. You know what I say about that, and for some reason no one else really talks about this, is that when I hold the phone and I have my fingers, you know, holding the front because, you know, I don't want to drop the phone and break it, but I can still see the full screen. And guess what? It also leaves... They even said, at least with this phone, they said, oh, look at all this wasted space. There's front-firing speakers. They're more concerned on how this guy is more concerned how pretty the computer is than selecting the slots to put the graphics card in to get the most performance. Seriously? Seriously, The Verge. This is from Vox Media. I'm not a big fan of Vox Media, but seriously, The Verge, if you are trying to get into PC gaming type videos, PC builds, talking about PCs, you seriously need to bring someone in that actually knows what the hell they're talking about.
Click down. Take your remaining brackets and just put them in the spots that you haven't used. You don't have to screw these in. They get bolted down by the back end bracket. And your GPU's in.
It does depend what kind of case you get. Personally, for me, I'm not a fan of these kinds of bracket systems because, in my personal experience, those types of clamps, they don't really hold down properly. I prefer screwing each individual one down. I don't like using those types of things, but that's just me.
Sold.
I'm not going to fault or criticize the Verge over that particular detail. That's more of a personal. It's more of a personal taste. Personally, for me, I'm not a fan of them, but that's just me.
Power supply time. I chose Corsair's 850.
This part is where it seriously starts going downhill.
Watt power supply because I need enough headroom for ray tracing GPUs when they come out, and I don't want to have to upgrade it again.
Right there, what he just said, I agree with. I'm one of those people, especially when it comes to the power supply. The power supply I have in my computer is complete overkill. I don't need I think I'm only using 60-70% of the power supply, and the rest of it is just waste. But if I upgrade the computer, if I get a new graphics card, if I basically do a whole new build, that's going to be one of the items that I don't really have to spend money on because I already have a very good power supply. So here's a tip for anyone out there that is thinking about doing a custom build PC. Go as good as you can on the power supply for your budget, because the better power supply you get up front, later down the line, you don't really have to worry about buying a new power supply. You can just reuse the power supply you have.
So all you have to do is take the brick and make sure that you align it with these little
By the way, I like it how he was just like fumbling with that power supply.
Take the brick and make sure that you align it with the.
Yeah, just put it on the table and just knock all that stuff over. Oh my god. Oh, that's just funny.
These little insulating pads, so the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact with the rest. I kind of like pause that. I want to go back. I'm not going to say anything. Let's just listen to what he says about this section about putting the power supply. With these little insulating pads, so the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact with the rest of the system.
Those are not insulating pads. Those are sound dampening pads. And no, when the power supply is on, when you're holding the case, you're not going to get shocked from it. Okay? The power supply is not going to... The case is not going to short circuit the power supply if there's no pad in between. Okay? The case I use, which is a very nice case, again, maybe a little bit of an overkill, very good case I have, but the power supply, the way it goes into the case, it is metal on metal. It's not short-circuited. I can touch my case and not get shocked. I don't know what the hell is he talking about here. That's just for sound dampening noises.
So just take it in, slide it in nice and easy until you have a...
By the way, why is he putting on why is the power supply going in backwards? Or upside down or whatever. The fan is supposed to be facing the other way. Why? For airflow. Yeah. You know, if you have because the way this power supply are typically designed is supposed to suck in the air. That's what the fan does, and then it vents it from the back.
Snug fit, and then
I'm just curious, do they actually put all the parts list that they used? No, they don't. Let's say I'm at 532. What kind of case is that? Alright, I'll figure that out later. But right now, that power supply is going on backwards.
And then shift it to the back and make sure it's right up against the frame. Now you just take the required screws and you tighten and screw in. So next step, we're going to install the CPU cooler. In this case, it's going to go on the top end of the case, and we're just going to have the hose hang out for a little while until we install the processor, which is going to come a little later. Always be sure to try to place it in the system first before you install it, because you can see it takes up a lot of space. But in this case, no pun intended, it fits in perfectly, and we're going to start screwing it in. And so there's nothing special about this screwing in process. They're just really long screws because they go through the entire frame of the cooler, and they take forever.
Not gonna lie, putting those kinds of radiators in the case can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. But yeah, those screws are also pretty long too, because most of the time they're supposed to accommodate for the fans that goes on top too. There are some things in this video that they kind of like skip over for some reason. But yeah.
So next up, cables. Every power supply is going to come with a big bag of Velcro cables. It's kind of...
No, it doesn't. Not every single power supply that you can buy comes in a Velcro bag full of cables. If you buy cheaper power supplies, the cables will sometimes be hardwired into the power supply. The kind of power supply you have there is a modular design, which means you can just pick the cables you need and forget the rest.
Kind of daunting at first.
Which means a cleaner, more manageable cable management system.
So you always have to find the ones that are going to fit. In this case, you need to match those cables with the correct descriptions on the power supply. Next step is we're connecting the power supply to the motherboard with a 24-pin cable. We're just matching that cable from the motherboard, threading it through the back, and attaching the 24-pin header to the power supply so that we can have one of the connections complete. The next few additions will be for the GPU.
Okay, I know it's not done, but his little cable management skills starting to look a little bit on the messy side.
For any specific ports that the case has, for any lighting that the case has, the CPU cooler, anything else really. We're installing the CPU, the heart of the computer or the brain, depending on how you look at it. So to do this, we're just going to remove the plastic covering that they put on the motherboard. We're just going to take this little plastic part out. Just toss that out of here.
Really? Yeah, I'm just going to remove it and just fling it out. I think that was more for entertainment value than anything else. I don't think this guy would really do that if there's no camera pointed at him. I wouldn't do it, but that's just me.
And now we have an exposed CPU holder, or rather slot, on the...
Yeah, it's exposed. Okay. So put a CPU on there.
Motherboard. And we're going to use the CPU applicator. This is a special little part that not everyone may get, but this motherboard that we got from ASUS definitely does have. It's called a CPU installation tool. It makes it really useful if you want to install a Core i7 hexa-core CPU. Yeah, we've got one, and it's an 8th generation chip, and it's ready to go, and it supports overclocking. So what having this little installer does for you is it's basically a brace that you can apply right to the CPU.
Unless this is like a new thing that companies are doing, I never heard of a brace to help you install a CPU onto the motherboard. Never heard of one, I never used one, I never really had problems with it. They tend to go in one way, and they usually have little notches on a corner of the processor with, you know, an arrow to let you know, hey, that's where you have to match it and just drop it on there. But This seems overly complicated to put a CPU in a motherboard.
And light it up with the triangles that you'll see on the bottom left corners. And this will make it easier for us to apply it to the motherboard and then apply thermal paste and then apply a CPU cooler on top. And we're just going to carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines up. And we're going to clasp down on it and we'll be good to go.
Notice how the CPU kind of like popped up as he was trying to clamp it down. Yeah, let's watch that again.
And we're going to clasp down on it and we'll be good to go. Everything lines up. We're just going to carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines up.
And it pops.
And we're going to clasp down on it and we'll be good to go. So we're about to apply thermal paste to the CPU. Every CPU cooler actually comes with a bit of thermal paste already neatly applied. And
so why are you going to add more? This part here is the absolute worst part of this video. Not even kidding. The Verge, Vox Media, I'd be very surprised if you guys watch this video, because I want you guys to come out with good stuff, because I know you guys have a multi-million subscriber base on your channel, and you guys right now, The Verge, you guys are doing an absolute disservice to your users for coming out with a video with such piss poor information, very, very bad information, very, very bad practices. It's just amazing. I'm just going to continue.
Circle around it, but it's usually not enough. It's good.
It's usually not enough? You don't... Thermal paste is one of those things in the PC building scene that you don't need a lot of thermal paste. In fact, if you actually put too much thermal paste, it can actually be a lot worse. You will get air gaps. You will have inconsistencies in the spreading of the thermal paste. The thermal paste that's on that heat sink right now is perfectly fine, okay? If the manufacturer felt that was not good enough, they wouldn't have done it like that, okay? Those things are absolutely designed to just take the cover off. You know, they usually have like some kind of plastic shielding on them. You just remove that, put it on top, screw it on, you're done. I don't know what the hell this guy's doing here. Let's just watch.
Essentially PC building practice to have a little bit extra.
You don't need extra. You don't need extra thermal paste. You just want a thin layer of thermal paste. You just want to fill in the gap. The point of the thermal paste is to fill in the air gap between it. You don't want too thick, because then, you know, the heat transfer doesn't really transfer enough to properly cool the CPU. You just want a nice little thin layers of thermal paste, and that's it. This part here is just, I just started laughing.
And layer it on top of the CPU. The final portion,
that right there is already too much, okay? But it gets worse.
Is to add the CPU cooler to the top end of the processor. So you're going to see that there
are... I think I need a drink from this scene here. Let's just...
of the processor. So
look at that! Oh my god! The Verge! Oh my god! Everyone working the Verge has no clue about PC building. No one is gonna take you seriously because of that right there. Holy crap. Oh my god. Oh god. I need a drink. Sorry. I need a drink from here on out because, oh my god, this. Come on. Seriously? Seriously? The Verge? Cheers. By the way, if you're wondering what I'm drinking, is Sam Adams Oktoberfest. Really good beer. The reason why this part here is such a big problem with this entire video is because, first of all, that is just way too much thermal paste. Second is, even if you're just going to just plop a crap load of thermal paste on the CPU, you want to at least, you know, spread it out evenly. I mean, let's see. I'm at 835. Let's go back to the part where he talks about this part here.
Every CPU.
Look at the thermal paste on there. Look how evenly placed it's on there, okay? You have a manufacturer that designed this heatsink, okay? And they designed the thermal paste that's on there. And this guy from The Verge is going to be telling you, yeah, that's not good enough, you know. Ugh. Yeah, we need more thermal paste, because more thermal paste means cooler CPU. No, it doesn't. It's actually a lot worse. Let's just
cooler to the top end of the processor. So you're gonna see that there are 4 brackets, or rather like screws in here with brackets and holders right here. And they're going to keep the cooler raised off the processor, but it's also gonna be close enough to actually physically come in contact.
By the way, there's no shot of him removing the thermal paste from the heatsink. So you're telling me all this thermal paste plus the thermal paste on the heatsink is going to mesh together and keep it cooler? I mean, I don't know about you, but even if I'm just going to put a stupid amount of thermal paste on the CPU, I want to stick to one type of thermal paste, not one from factory and then one I just bought from the store and just, you know, just squirted some thermal paste on the CPU. Because, you know, obviously the way this looks on here, yeah, he's like, come on.
And they're going to keep the cooler raised off the processor, but it's also going to be close enough to actually physically come in contact with it, like base.
You just need a thin layer of thermal paste.
Basically keep it cool. Take thumb screws like this and just screw them on. So now that our internals are done.
By the way, when it comes to screwing on the heatsink, you kind of want to screw it in that it's not too loose, but you don't over tighten it, because it is possible to damage the CPU if it's over tight, if it's too much pressure on the CPU from the heatsink. You could actually damage the CPU if it's too tight on there. A lot of good heat sinks, they would design it in the way that it will screw down up to a certain point, but then it won't allow it to screw any tighter, because if you over tighten, you would damage the CPU.
We're going to put all the panels back on, which is the top glass, side glass, front glass, and of course the back panel where all this fun stuff is happening.
Let me go back.
Top glass, side glass, front glass, and of course the back panel where all of this.
Look at that panel. That panel with this vent here. The Verge, I forgot the guy's name, but everyone at the Verge, listen to me. That panel has this vent right here that's designed so that the fan from the power supply will get the air from that vent, because that vent allows airflow, which is probably why you don't really criticize Apple laptops, because those laptops are not really the greatest when it comes to proper airflow in terms of keeping the processors and graphics chips cool, which is why they tend to crap out after a couple of years. Little side note for you guys: I used to work at Apple Care, so I kind of worked on the other side of Apple, and it is clear that you know what? I'm just going to continue. I'll save the rant towards the end.
Fun stuff is happening. So we fully built the PC. Everything's put together, and
everything's put together, but not put together correctly.
And we got to the post screen. So
let me check something.
put together, and we got to the post screen. So what's next? Well, you need a USB flash drive with your Windows installation media on it.
One thing I was trying to figure out is the number of screws that's on that power supply,
where all of this fun stuff is happening. So we fully built the PC.
Okay, so this is a Corsair case. I recognize the logo since I also use a Corsair case.
PC. Everything's put together, and
I'm just now noticing this. Oh my god. This video gets worse. Not only this guy put the power supply into this computer backwards, it looks like he only used
and we got to the post
two of the screws. He only used two screws. Unless he used a third one and they just, you know, maybe the video is just slightly zoomed in.
And we got to the post
I can't really see the bottom. Kind of wish I knew the actual keyboard commands.
Things put together, and we got to the post screen.
Unless there is a third screw here, there is no screws here. Which tells me, if there's no screw down there, he only has two screws holding the power supply. Every single power supply I've ever seen always has 4 holes to put 4 screws in, so it's in there properly. This guy put it on backwards, and he only used 2 screws to hold the power supply. The Verge, anyone at the Verge, just listen to me. Find someone competent if you're going to be doing PC videos, PC gaming videos, okay? Hire me. I'll actually give you correct information on how to build a proper PC, because this is not how you properly build a PC. No, it's not. No, it's not. Oh my god. He only used 2 screws to hold the power supply, and he put the power supply on backwards. Oh my god. I need a drink. Hey, Capital One. Good thing you spent some good money on this fine production of a video because it's starting to become a laughingstock.
So what's next? Well, you need a USB flash drive with your Windows installation media on it, and of course a license key. So I plugged that up, installed Windows in a couple of minutes.
Unless on a uber fast computer, you know, with really fast memory, Windows doesn't really take a few minutes to install, at least in my experience. You know, at the bare minimum, maybe 30 minutes, but I don't really define 30 minutes as a few minutes. Maybe I'm wrong, but usually Windows installation doesn't really take a few minutes to install. That's just me.
Installed a bunch of drivers.
Well, yeah, of course it has to install a bunch of drivers. It's trying to install the drivers for all the components that you put in together that the CPU is probably going to break in the next month or so because, you know, you put on way too much thermal paste and you're just going to damage it. But yeah, it needs all the drivers so the computer actually works properly. You're sounding like, oh my god, I installed Windows. Why? I had to install all the drivers for it. I don't know why it needs all these drivers. It just needed drivers. It needs the drivers so that the computer works properly so that, you know, you can actually get, you know, near full performance out of the hardware you put in there that you spent $2,000 on. Just saying.
And now we have a fully functioning gaming PC ready to run some games. Right now I've got Arma 3 running at max.
Arma 3. That is the game that they're showing off. So let's check something out. And by the way, I was also watching Review Tech USA, and Rich didn't know what the game was, but it is Arma 3. Alright, let's see. The Verge spent $2,000 on a PC. And this is the first game they show is Arma 3. They show Arma 3. Arma 3. Which came out system requirements. My 4-year-old processor in my computer with the graphics card I have in here can run on Ultra. This is not a high demanding game. It's not a high demanding game. Windows 7, 8, 10, Intel Core i5, AMD FX 4300 or better, GTX 660 or Radeon HD 7800 series with 2 gigs of VRAM, DirectX 11, 6 gigs of RAM. This is not a high demanding game. It really isn't. In fact, I'm pretty sure the Nintendo Switch can easily run this game. So, first game you show on your $2,000 PC is a nearly 5-year-old game.
Maximum settings, native resolution, which is 1080p HD.
1080p HD. Really? I mean, I understand there are plenty of PC gamers that are rocking the 1080p panels, but a $2,000 gaming PC should be using a 4K monitor. Just saying.
and it's running pretty smoothly.
It should be running pretty smoothly. I mean, it is like a 4 or 5 year old game. Even at max settings, you don't really need the latest and greatest. You can use 5 year old PC components and it'll run in max settings. You know, it's not a high demanding game.
Like, I'm averaging 70 and 80 FPS, and this is normally like a very intensive game to run.
This is not an intensive game.
And it's still doing a pretty good job. So right now I'm playing League of Legends. It's one of my favorite games. I'm actually playing...
You're showing Arma 3, which is not exactly a powerhouse of a game to run. The next game you show on your $2,000 PC is League of Legends. I have a Surface laptop that's not really made for gaming. It can run League of Legends just fine.
Against a bot, and I'm distracted, so I'm not actually doing so well. But otherwise, like, this is pretty much what you would see me do on a gaming computer. Test stuff out, and hopefully have really high frame rates like I am right now. I'm averaging 120 FPS, and that's only because I've actually locked the game to that frame rate, because I can get around 300 FPS playing League on maximum settings, which is a little bit absurd, and you don't really need that, so
The Verge, this is why you need to hire someone if you're going to continue making these kinds of videos very quickly. Because any serious PC gamer, the phrase they don't want to hear, if Total Biscuit was still alive, and rest in peace, Total Biscuit, I love your channel. I love your viewpoints when it comes to PC gaming stuff. If he was alive and saw this video, I can pretty much guarantee you he'll be making a video criticizing this video. Because that sentence he just said right there, you don't need all those frame rates. You don't need all those frame rates. Oh my god. I'm not going to lie. I know 300 frames per second seems, you know, a little bit of an overkill. But the more frames you have means better input latency. Once you get up to that kind of frame rate level, you know, well over 120 frames per second, which is, you know, we locked it down to, you're virtually going to have no input lag when playing the game. Okay. You're really gonna say that? We don't need all those frames, you know. We can dial it back some. Yeah. It's like saying, yeah, you don't really need to play games in 60 frames, you know, 30 frames per second. That's fine. No. Higher frame rate, the more frames per second you get from a game, it's better.
Locked it. Building a gaming desktop has been a great experience. I'm able to max out a lot of my favorite titles, and I'll be able to play a lot of upcoming titles like Battlefield 5.
Again, like I said earlier, the Frostbite engine that Electronic Arts uses for Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4, and other games. Even though I have issues with Electronic Arts and their business practices, the one thing I'm not going to criticize them on is they have a really good games engine. The Frostbite engine is a really good engine to use. It can run. The Frostbite engine is designed to run on a wide variety of devices, especially on the PC side of things. You can run it on a crappy little crap box of a PC versus all the way up to a high-end PC. And of course, you'll get better experiences on a higher spec PC. But even on my 4-year-old computer I can run Battlefield, any of the Battlefields. I did not try the Battlefield 5 beta, but I did try out Battlefield 1 on my PC, and I was easily able to max it out, full resolution down on my monitor, over 120 plus frames per second on ultra settings. Just going to leave it there.
And Cyberpunk 2077 without...
Now, Cyberpunk... At least it says Cyberpunk 2077 because, well, from what I've seen, it does look like it's going to be a pretty high demanding game, and at least there's a game he's talking about that is actually going to take full advantage of that $2,000 PC. But I don't know, we'll see. Maybe the engine they're using to build that game will run just fine on ultra setting on slightly older hardware.
Without worrying too much about the parts I have, when ray tracing GPUs come out, for example, I'll be able to upgrade without having to buy a completely new system. And
by the way, in terms of this whole ray tracing thing, personally, I would say wait for a second generation cards for the ray tracing, because what Nvidia showed off about the consumer graphics cards for ray tracing, I saw a noticeable frame rate drop. I don't think it's quite there yet. I would say at least wait until the second generation cards comes out for it.
And if I have a problem down the line, I can always just swap out a part and have it serviced rather than losing my whole computer.
You can't exactly just swap out parts, okay? Especially if you're running a Windows 10 machine. Now, when it comes to like RAM or, you know, the hard drive, things like that, graphics card, fine. When you start talking about the processor, the motherboard, you might start running into issues that, you know, Microsoft is going to flag your license, because Microsoft's going to think it's like, oh, yeah, it's not matching your license. Seems like you've installed Windows on a different machine. Yeah, we're gonna have to remove your license because of that. You can't just swap out parts when you're talking about Windows 10. Motherboard, CPU, things like that. Some of the parts, I will admit, is a little bit of a gray area, but usually, if you're swapping out the motherboard, that's pretty much a red flag that is going to trigger from Microsoft. Just saying.
And of course, now we also have a computer to test and benchmark games here at the Verge.
That right there, what he just said, I have a problem with. The reason why I have a problem with it is he just said, now we have a PC that we can benchmark stuff on. Wait a minute. So you guys produce videos. I'll admit, very high quality videos. Well produced videos. Shot really well. Nice sound. All that stuff. You're telling me that you're not using a high-spec PC? Well, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this is like the very first PC, or, you know, very first, you know, Windows, you know, machine that they're actually working on, you know, in terms of for actual work. You know, besides, you know, just like reviewing, you know, Windows laptops. I'm not talking about like the reviewing Windows laptops. I'm talking about having a computer dedicated for work. That's all they're going to use it for. You're telling me this is the very first Windows 10 machine that you have that you're able to benchmark stuff on. I guess most people at the Verge use Macs. because they really like their Macs apparently. I'm not saying that I'm an Apple hater, but I'll say one thing. The specs in this PC build for $2,000, you're not going to get it for that price on the Mac side of things. Just saying.
Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've built a computer before yourself, or how you would spend $2,000 on your own build. I'm really interested in seeing what sort of parts you guys would get.
Verge, I forgot your name. I apologize. I don't feel like going back to the beginning to find out your name. Don't ever do another video about PC gaming, because the Verge, I'm sorry, you guys already screwed up. No one's going to take you seriously. And to prove to you, look what the Verge did. They disabled the like and dislike. They disable comments for this video. And that's because everyone that watched this video called them out on how piss poor this video is. They have 2.1 million subscribers. They have other channels too. They get pretty good video watch time on them. There's already over 175,000 views on this video. The Verge, you're telling me if this is your start for PC gaming videos on your channel, you failed. You already failed. No one is going to take you seriously. In fact, if you do come out with more videos like this, there's going to be more people looking into these videos and finding mistakes into them. I'm dead serious. Get someone that knows what the hell they're talking about, understands how to properly build a PC. Because this is terrible. And just on the side note, these anti-static bands, they're a scam. You're basically telling people, oh yeah, put on the little band and you'll be fine. It's crap. They've done tests on them. It's a complete sham. It's a scam. It's fake. It doesn't work. And by the way,
hey everybody.
See this kind? The Verge? See how this particular kind that, you know, you put on your wrist, but guess what? Look. Wow, look at all these wires. And look, there's alligator clips on them. You know why the alligator clips are on there? So that you can ground yourself so you don't transfer static electricity. Come on. Come on, The Verge. Oh my God. Seriously. And EEV Blog did a... By the way, what The Verge used is actually called a cordless anti-static wristband, because, you know, there's no cord to come out of it. His video, which came out 3 years ago.
Hi, what time is it? It's myth busting time. Yes, cordless anti-static wristbands. None of this rubbish. What do you want one of these annoying anesthetic wristband cords for?
And that right there, The Verge, is why no one's going to be taking you seriously. Maybe when it comes to like laptop reviews and cell phone reviews, maybe some people will take you seriously on those things, which I don't know why, honestly. Anything concerning with PC gaming or just PC desktops, custom builds, they're not going to take you seriously. Best thing you can do is scrap that idea, remove that video, move on. Or remove the video, get someone else on that actually knows what the hell they're talking about. Because
So a few years ago,
what you just did here,
TC or man.
Stefan, you need to stop. Don't make any more videos like this. And Rich from Review Tech US said something that, you know, maybe they, you know, they just asked someone in the office, like, have you ever built a PC before? It's like, yeah, I built one before. Great. Let's make a video like that. Let's make a PC build. The Verge. This is the way you produce the video is perfectly fine. I'm not criticizing you on that. The information and the practices that was done in this video is god awful. It's terrible. It's terrible. If you build them correctly, if you properly build PCs correctly, you're not going to overheat them. If that PC overheats, it's because of this. It's because of that. Okay? I'm just flabbergasted. No one at The Verge watched this video and thought, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't look like this was properly put together. And it wasn't. It really wasn't. Alright. I'm going to end it here. This video has probably gone on way too long. Actually, how long has this been going? Wow, over an hour and 20 minutes. Okay. Wow. An hour and 20 minute long video about a video that's 11 minutes long. If this video is too long, I apologize. When I heard about this, I had to watch it myself. And I had to watch someone else talking about this video just to make sure if maybe something changed in PC building that maybe I wasn't aware of. But no, this was just terrible. Oh my god, it's just really, really bad. I'm just wondering if there is a post on this. I'm just curious. Yep. Of course, this one. All right, let's see. Oh my god. This part unless I'm just an idiot and just didn't notice it in the video, that was the cable management this guy did? Oh my god. Holy crap. To be fair to them, if you haven't built a PC before, it can be a bit fiddly. However, if they have built one before, or a few for that matter, there's no excuse of that mess. Exactly. If this was their first attempt at a PC build, they should have hired someone that knows what the hell they're talking about, or even how to properly build a PC. The Verge, if you want to know about good cable management, I've done videos on that on my channel. And I don't even have 4,000 subscribers, and I built a better built PC than what you guys did at over 2 million subscribers. Holy crap. It's just... It's like they just asked someone, has anyone ever built a PC before? And only one person said, yes, I've done one before. But everyone else, like, no, I don't build PCs. No, I don't use desktops. I only use laptops. And then they complain why, it overheats and you don't get full performance because you're trying to take an i9 Intel processor and just trying to take all the heat away from a heatsink, like this bottle cap. And you're wondering why you're not getting full performance. Come on. Wow. In the power supply was put on backwards with 2 screws. Not all 4. I'm done. I'm done talking about it. This video's gone on for too long. I'm done. Anyway, that's it. Like always, have a good one. Leave those comments down below. Like this video. Share this video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. And like always, have a good one. And yes, I am on those different social media platforms. You can find me on there too.